So I just spent the last 3 months building a life-size General Grievous bust, which is entirely 3D printed. I went through on designing some new eyes with some really detailed pieces within them and doing my first ever hand-painted job with some resin printed lenses. And I've gone through and designed a whole new weathering technique just to build this beautiful piece, which is now hopefully going to deserve a spot in my mum's house somewhere. So let's go through the whole journey of what it takes to build, well, the life-size General Grievous bust that everyone's been waiting for. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is find some 3D files. Now this is probably the worst bit of any project, as it seems to always be, because I hate sanding, I hate the priming, and I don't really like the 3D printing bit of it. I just enjoy building the thing. So I'm gonna download these, and then we're gonna get these things started to print, and then we're gonna get them sanded, and then we're gonna get them primed, then sanded, then filled, then primed, and sanded. But I'm not gonna talk about that in this video because I am too lazy to. So if you need to know how to sand your 3D printed props and special effects, well, leave a link down in the description for where you can watch those tutorials on how you sand your stuff, because I don't like sanding. So now when it comes to actually building our Grievous project, the main thing we are going to need is to sort out our base coat. And for that base coat, it basically consists of 2 different paints. We're gonna be going through with some MTN white bone and some DNA Metallic base coat. Basically, this is just a candied base coat, but it is going to be the fundamentals of basically building this whole project. And then everywhere in between, we're going to be focusing on our eyes, we're going to be focusing on the tubes, we're going to be talking about the eye sockets, and then sorting out the rest of things. But these are going to be your 2 backbones of the colors, and then down through this video, I'm going to tell you which paints you're going to need for what projects and when. But basically, get your whole project painted in white bone, and then the little bits and pieces like the sides of the ears and the little streaks on the top, we're gonna be airbrushing them because I forgot to paint them. And then it's just gunmetal in the middle and the gunmetal around the outside, and then a bit of gloss black as well, which also reminds me, you will also need some MS2K black, which is just a 2K black in a HVLP gun. So those are your backbones of our paints, but basically that is all you're gonna need to start off this craziness project. So let's actually go into our little detail pieces on how I can actually make the best Grievous that is out there, because so far there's only 3 and I want to be the best. So what do I mean by trying to be the best? Now I'm going to break this down into 3 different criteria. The first one is going to be our eyes. This is what I want to have, that fleshy undertone within his eye sockets. I want that ultra realistic eye with that glossy, shimmery sort of thing that you'll get in a normal pupil. And then the key other thing is I want it to look uniformed, that looks like it has been put into his actual bone mask. Because if you've ever seen General Grievous without his, well, body piece, his actual original species from Legends, well, this is what he looks like. So I want to get as accurate as I can to that. The key number 2 thing is going to be the finish. I want this thing to look worn. I want it to look tep. I don't want it to look like it does in Battlefront 2 with that sort of weathered damage, half-burnt head. I want it to look roughly a bit like it is, maybe say halfway through maybe the Battle of Utapau, General Grievous when he's fighting Obi-Wan. Roughly around that sort of time period, with just a little bit of weathering, that little dirt and grime that's going to hide within his tubes, within his throat, around his face, around the ears, all of those sorts of fancy things. And that is what's going to elevate the project. And number 3 is definitely going to be our bone. Now, this is the bone white color that we're going to be using. Now, some people are just doing this thing in white, and some people are doing it in sort of a cream. But if you look into it and you research it enough, it needs to be a bone. It is technically bone, so we need it to be perfect. I want it to fit really uniformed. I don't want it to be showing any extra details or anything craziness. I just want it to be perfect. So those are going to be my main 3 criteria. Obviously, I really want to perfect our throat and those tubes, because that's a really key feature within the actual bust. And then whatever else I decide we need to work on. So the first thing we are going to be going through now in our timeline of this ridiculousness is, well, let's focus on our eyes so we can make some molds, some casts, and let them dry. While we work on that, we can start painting other bits and pieces throughout this project. Now that we've painted the rest of Grievous, all of our rattle can from that 94 is all done and dusted. But the next thing we need to focus on is, well, Grievous's eyes. Now, the key thing with Grievous is, well, you can kind of see that his eyes have so much texture and detail within them, and we need to capture that within the bust. But I have an idea on how we can achieve this. So, I've done some tests on just a random 3D print, and, well, got, well, this sort of effect. Now, I did 3 different styles of it. I've done this, I have done this sort of style, as you can see on there, and then the last style. Now, this is all the same material, all just different patterns on how we applied it. So big coats, thin coats, and stipples. Now, what is it, you ask? Well, I made up some of this. It is just a combination of PVA glue and sawdust. So for my Doom suit here, the bust base piece is just made of MDF. And I just took a saw and just went really slowly through it and caught all of the little bits of sawdust. Mix it up with a fair bit of PVA glue in just a little plastic container. Once you mix it up, then you can just apply it using a paintbrush, and it sort of gives you a bit of an effect like this. And then we just simply, well, apply it onto the piece. Really simple. So the goal is to just evenly apply this. I found that doing a bit of a stipple with a thick coat does the best. We're just gonna go around all the eyes, avoiding the actual pupil itself, just all of the flesh and the tissue around it, and we're not going to go too far over onto the sides. We're going to try and keep it contained as much as possible. So now when we are waiting on all of the eyes and that little PVA concoction to dry, the next thing we need to focus on is, well, the eyes. Now, yes, I could paint straight onto the actual Grievous eye, but I don't really have any interest in trying to do that. It's going to be too far deep in, it's going to be really difficult to airbrush, and I'd like to make it as detailed as physically possible. So I've come up with 3 ideas. The first one being is some contact lenses. I could buy a pair of cat eye contact lenses. Now, the option with those is that Grievous has sort of got those cat eyes with the slit through the middle of it, and then sort of like a pattern around the outside of it. Idea number 2 is I can make a copy of the actual Grievous eye, something very similar to this. And then what I could do is then put some UV resin onto it. I can paint it, put more UV resin, remove it, and then I can make my own contact lenses and put them within the piece. Or my other idea is I make a reverse mold, cast it out of pinky seal, then I can put UV onto this and make my own lenses this way. So the first one being is we're not painting this thing, that's going out the window. The second thing is putting contact lenses. Now, I contacted some of my friends, and the only problem with the contact lenses is they are going to dry out, because if they're not on contact with eyes or something, they dry and crack. So we can't use that one. But what I can do is I can jump over into Mesh Mixer, and then I can cut out just a little bit of a section of Grievous's eye. So if we imagine Grievous's head, we're just gonna basically cut his eye out and then get rid of it, and then we can print it. Now I'm going to print this 3 different times. Now what I'm going to do the first time is I'm going to print it once, and then I can then do a reverse cast. So I can put a block into it, then subject boolean it out so that then I have got the reverse of what the eye is. And that's what I've got here. These ones really simple prints, only took about 5 minutes on CAD to do this. But essentially what we've got is Grievous's eye, and you can see it's all inlaid. Then you put the block into it. So that's what we've got here. And I then subtract it. So I've got an exact replica of what is in here extruded out, if that makes sense. Then we can put some UV resin on it. Now the problem is that the UV resin will go on. You cannot get this thing out, which is a bit of a slight issue because we need to remove it. And we want to make contact lenses so we can remove it. But if it's stuck in, we're not going to be able to do it. So this idea and trying to paint it on here goes out the window. But the next step is our third option, which is actually going to be the one I think that's going to work. Now we're going to basically, this is just a prototype at the moment, take Grievous's eye and we're going to build a box frame around it. This way that then we can put some pinky seal in it, or just like a silicon casting mold. And as for those people who don't know what pinky seal is, it's a fast set silicon. It's a 2-part 1-to-1 ratio. Best stuff ever, so get some. And then I can make a reverse cast of that and then make it out of pinky seal. Very similar to our UV option, but this way it's silicon. So I can bend it and we can pop the lenses off to make our eyes. And that's what I've got right here in front of me. Now casting this into some pinky seal, you can see that we have got this. And as you can see in the videos before, we've got our little box frame and the top and the sides, and we've set it with some pinky seal. Now, the goal is right now is to try and get this thing off. Lovely. And that is a reverse cast made of silicon of Grievous's eyes. Now don't worry about this, the supports actually fell over during it printing, as you can kind of see in there. But that's right, doesn't matter, we don't need that bit anyway. Basically, our next goal is, let's put some UV resin onto this. We're gonna try and paint these up and see what they do. I've now just checked back and our beautiful little concoction that we made of PVA glue and sawdust is now combined and dried and beautiful. We're now going to start painting the eye sockets. Now for these, we're gonna be using the Createx paints again, as per usual. As you know, we already love these paints as they are. Now for this, I'm not 100% sure what colors I'm gonna use as of yet, but you can kind of see that they're sort of a burnt sort of color. So I'm thinking from my half-used list of things, I'm thinking we go some burnt umber. This is definitely gonna lay down that sort of browny, darky, reddish color that we need. I'm definitely gonna go in some with black. I'm definitely going to be going in with some red. And I'm also thinking just a tiny bit of purple. But instead of using the Illustrator range, I am going to switch it up and go with some of the opaque range. So this is sort of the same, but it's less pigment, and when it dries, it's very translucent, sort of opaque color. So I think that's gonna be the goal for what we decide to use on these. I'm gonna need some thinner, but I don't know. I'll play it as it goes. And then by the end of all of this painting stuff, I'll leave a full list of exactly what paints I used on what. So once we put our little makeshift eyes onto the actual pupils of Grievous, we want them to be a black base coat. So we're definitely going black first, then we'll go over black, the burnt umber. I think I'm gonna throw a little bit of purple in there, maybe hints of white, but that'll be very hand painted, very just over the top. And then I think we should flat clear it. Maybe, actually, no. We're gonna leave that clear because I think we'll go the exact same as Grievous's throat, which will end up being a combo of flat and gloss clear. It'll be a semi. So let's go. This thing is absolutely perfect. Oh, I don't know if you can see that on camera how good this looks. Look at that. That is freaky as well. Now obviously we've got to take some time on that, but oh yeah. Let's keep going. Come on. Grievous's eyes are done. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but let's get this in a position that you can. There you go. That is what I'm talking about. Now, obviously, it's not exactly the same as a reference image. I would have had to go in exactly the same and build up the same details and stuff, but the stippling that we did with the PVA and the wood chips actually works beautifully. I wouldn't go and change anything, I don't reckon. So, going to say is dry brushing is the key part to making this good. You'll notice a lot, you can see the photos here, that on the top layers, I've got sort of like a white and it's very dry brushed on. It's actually a combo of just white and a tiny, 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 tiny bit of moss green. The green just sort of, it darkens that white while also giving it sort of a skin flesh tone. It sounds a bit confusing being green, but those colors do work really well, and it's just a good pairing to sort of get nearly a beige look. But definitely, I've nailed this. So I think it's time that I can take the tape off. And we can see this thing once and for all. I'm excited. Now, the tape job I'm gonna say is not gonna be perfect. It's really hard to sort of know exactly where I want things, but the great thing with acrylic paints is they are obviously water-based, so we can just peel off the tape at any time, or sorry, pull off the paint at any time, and we can just smooth it back, or when I weather it, I can chip it in and we can fix it up. Ooh, yes. Okay, yeah, I really did stuff that tape job, but it doesn't matter. I can fix it. I might even go with some hand painting as well. Just do up. I love this. That. Okay, it really needs the eyes to go, like his actual physical eyes to go in. That's so sick. Oh, that is good. All right, So let's very quickly go through how we did the throat, because it is very, very similar to doing the eyes. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is I did paint mine without putting any details. And with those details, I'm talking about our PVA and wood chip concoction that we made on earlier. But now that I've sat down, I've looked back, I would highly recommend that you do add this to the throat, just to give it a little bit more texture and detail, and it just ties in the bodily bits, so your throat and the eye sockets and cavities, and it just sort of makes that whole vibe of the helmet sort of fit together and look seamless when it's all put together. So the first thing I'm going to say is that my videos look a little bit different just because it doesn't have those details, but just imagine that the details are there. Now, the first thing we are going to want to do is just go through with our airbrush and all of our Createx Illustrator paints as per usual. And I'm going to highly recommend that you start off with some tiny bit of red and majority of white. These are going to be all that fleshy, toned pieces. We're going to start attacking around the top harsh edges, around your sort of cut edges, and sort of those deeper channels, and maybe just a little bit over the top surfaces. This is just sort of building that cartilage and the fat, that then when we start to layer over the darker colors, you can sort of bring those colors through and it all matches into one. So we're going to attack them first. Then the next thing I'm going to say is load up some burnt umber, some red and some purple. Take these really slowly and just sort of start attacking over the darker spots. So start going around the top seals, around the hard edges, and sort of nearly layering over the top of what you've already painted, but this time try and fill in the gaps and sort of start to blend this whole piece together. It's a little bit tedious and a little bit time consuming, but you sort of then start to get a knack for it and then figure it out as you go. I would also highly recommend going onto ChatGPT sometimes and just punching in what it's trying to paint, and it will also give you a lot of layering codes, which is what I got some of my inspo from in layering up the sheep's throat. So you will also start to notice that then you'd maybe take some bits and pieces of paint off, and then I'd layer on some new bits of paint. An example just there, and you can see I just sort of start to build those bits. And then again, some lighter blues and reds in here, whereas down here it's more blacky fleshed tone. Then once you've completed all of that, I'd highly recommend go through with some dry brushing. Go through with some dry brushing, majority being white and a tint of black. This gets you sort of like a grey undertone, which you don't want too much, but just enough to sort of settle onto the piece. And you just sort of keep building up and up. For this, I'm going to highly recommend that you start using some Createx opaque range, specifically the red, blue, and the violet purple. These colors are really crucial, and especially being opaques, that means you can layer on a little bit of red, but it isn't going to cover what you've already painted. So say you put down a nice black undercoat with a bit of brown and burnt umber and this, then you just hint of red over the top. You're still going to be able to see the underside, but it's going to have that tinge of red through it. Whereas if you painted red over the top, it's just going to make it red and cancel out what was underneath it. So just really have fun with the throat. It's not as really crucial as our eyes are. The eyes are more of that staple piece to this whole project. The throat gets really hidden in the end. So now that that one out of the way, let's start and actually weather this thing. Because as you can see, I've already weathered the base on this. This is my trial run. So we got to do the head. So let's go. All right, so I think it's time we now start talking about how we actually weathered this beautiful bust to get to, well, this. First thing we're going to do is go through with our eye water eclipse, and we're just going to take the top nib crown off. Now, the reason we're going to be doing this is that the airflow then ends up being different. So as you can see, we can start actually applying the sort of, well, bone sort of detail lines through it. I'm not really sure what to call these things, but basically they're going to be over the entire helmet of Grievous. Now, you will notice on mine, it's especially heavier at the back. You can see there's one just there. They're sort of all just hidden around, but I have tried to weather these things out because, well, I don't think they're not very prominent, but they are there. So you do need to add these details, but we need to remove them. So as you can see with mine, I am very slowly applying this, actually relatively heavy without the crown. Now I will say you do need to be very careful because then the needle of the airbrush is going to be very, very prominent, And if you whack the piece, you are going to break the top of the needle, and you are going to need to get a new needle for your airbrush before moving forth. So definitely try and be as careful as possible. If you don't feel very comfortable, just put the crown back on. You can do the same, it's just gonna be a little bit slower. So we're just going to apply this over the rest of the helmet, and we're gonna try and get these into the groove, and we're also going to be doing this piece, the little lower body piece. Because if you noticed, I had already weathered this a while ago, and then I did the helmet today, and then realized we're gonna have to do the other one because, well, it doesn't look as good. So once we apply these, it's now time to put the crown back on. We're gonna pull that trigger really far back, and we're just do a nice light dust coat over the entire bust. Now, the reason for doing this very big coat over everything is we can start now applying the actual real weathering within the piece. Now, the other things we are going to need for this is, well, a spray bottle with just some water in it, and a chucks. Now, try and not wet this, keep it as dry as possible because we are going to be wetting it, but make sure it's a dry chucks to start with. And the other thing you are going to need is one of these bad boys, a stencil brush. Now, this stencil brush is, well, relatively important to achieving our effect. If you've seen me use this before, this is a very different weathering style to what I'm used to, where it's dry brushing onto the piece. This is more applying all the paint, and it's very similar to, say, a black wash, but just with a little different steps involved. Now, once that whole thing's on, we're gonna spray the whole helmet with our mist of water. And then we're gonna be taking our dry chucks. Now, most chucks don't seem to absorb water unless they're really soaked, then wringed out, then they're gonna absorb other water. But when they're still dry and it's only a very small repellent of water, it doesn't seem to absorb that water at all, which is perfect for what we need. So we're just gonna be going over the helmet like so, and it's going to start building in this weathering. And as you can see, I just sort of take a bit, maybe take a bit of water, try and iron something out, and then just keep going. And I just go and go and go around this whole piece, spray maybe a little bit onto your chucks, then go onto the helmet just in that dab corner. It's a really weird technique, I know, but it is going to make, I think, the perfect effect for Grievous. And if you do give your little bone lines a good decent amount of drying time, spray it with your airbrush, just like freeze it and then it dries faster. You will notice if you do this over and over again, it will dull those lines, but not fully get rid of them. If it does get rid of them, we're just gonna go over them again with the crown, far back, quick pass, and that'll call it that. But if you do this over and over and over again, into the hard spots, do a little bit of that. Water, wipe it off, dry it down. Try and avoid a paper towel because that does absorb water, and the reason we need this to not absorb water is because that's how we're getting this effect. So after you do this again and again and again and again, well, you're gonna get this result. And then we're just gonna do the exact same to this. So that's pretty much it when it comes to actually the weathering. It's relatively easy, not super difficult. But the other thing we are gonna do is we're gonna start blacking out the lines around the ears of Grievous, just around the side here and here, just to give a little bit more depth and detail into this. We're also gonna go through with a file, roughen up some of those hard edges. It's gonna start making them white, so it's like bone marrow has fallen off, and it's sort of given that cleaner bone underneath. And then the last thing we're also gonna be doing is dry brushing off the little bits and pieces within Grievous's throat and chin, and just dry brushing that into a nice white gray, just around the things. And you can also go with the stencil brush, which is what we're gonna be dry brushing with. Some of that white gray just around the back gunmetal grill, around the base, around the fronts. You do whatever you think is going to be best, because there are actually no real great references of Grievous in a battle damaged form. So really, you have the creative freedom of that. The other thing we are going to be doing is, after our beautiful Alumiluster pieces are done down the bottom with our gloss black, our Alumiluster and our clear coat, then we're just going to start applying a burnt cyan over the top of this. That's the other thing I did forget to mention. For all of the weathering, it is just going to be burnt cyan. That's our best color that is going to weather the entire piece. It's a combo between black and brown, and it's not too heavy on either of them, making it absolutely perfect for this. We're just going to spray them over the ear pieces, let them dry, and then we're going to take our stencil brush and brush over them, that removing the weathering, and then revealing that beautiful shine of Alumiluster and a bit of weathering. We're going to do that to the same pieces of the front just here. And then that is pretty much it. So that is our eyes done. I've got one more to go. It's just drying off at the moment, as you can kind of see just there. Then the eyes we are super happy with. All of them painted, clear coated, weathered, done. Our throat, perfect, weathered, done. Pretty much the same as the eyes, just a little bit different of a technique, a little bit darker. And then with our pipes finally installed, which yes, are not the easiest thing. You'll notice that in this time lapse, it did actually take me about 10 or 15 minutes. And well, the weird thing is that not all of these pipes fit perfectly. Mine are a little bit jank at the back. There's this weird piece that sits just here. It sort of goes up, across, and down. I have actually had to cut and shatter this thing in half. You can see it just here. I've had to actually shatter it in half just to be able to fit it in. Then I've glued it back together. I didn't do the greatest job gluing it, but we're just gonna pretend it's weathering, and it's right at the back. You don't see it at all. And then all of the other little bits and pieces that are in there, all of the rest of our tubes, you'll notice these beautiful gold ones. We've just gone through with some rub and buff, this is the autumn gold, and just rub and buff this really nice and lightly over our gunmetal DNA, which has been clear coated in that TS80 like we did earlier, which I kind of covered over very, very fast. And then once that is done, well, eyes. I nearly did forget about these, but I'm gonna show you what we need to do. Now, from our pinky seal cast that we did earlier on in the video, this thing is now set and cured, and I have gone through quite a few different tests on how we can make some eyes. So the first thing I'm gonna do, take your pinky seal mold and some of this UV hardening resin. We're just gonna spray a little nice even coat just over the very top of the pinky seal, trying to make an even crater throughout the piece. I'm gonna pop this one outside and let it cure in the sun. After that 10 minutes is up, we're going to take it in and we're just gonna remove it from our pinky seal mold, flip it over, take it back out in the sun for another 10 minutes. So I found you can't paint on the pinky seal with the resin. The paint moves, shifts, and it's too difficult. So basically what this pinky seal is going to be doing is saving us 3D modeling in the internal of the eye, and it's giving us a little bit more creative freedom in how we make this thing. So yes, it is probably a little bit silly. We could have tried to 3D model something, but seeing I didn't 3D model these to start with, Galactic Armory did, we're just gonna do it a nice little easy way where we get to have a little bit of fun with pinky seal and learning how to make eyes. So once that's done, we're just gonna whack a little bit of primer on it just to give that little bit of bite to the paint. And then once you've completed that, it's time to spray the whole thing in a gloss white. So for a gloss white, I'd recommend going with an automotive white, and that's what's gonna give us this whole base coat of both of the eyes. Because, well, the bottom layer is white. After you completed that, start going through with some reds and some blues. This is gonna sort of give this veiny texture that we're soon gonna cover up, but then reveal when we do our veins. So we're gonna be attacking with some cyan, some reds, and a hint of violety, bluey purple. Then the next step we're gonna do is go over with some green and some yellow and a hint of white. This is what's gonna start giving us this greeny, yellowy effect that we need throughout Grievous's eyes. We're gonna spray a nice even coat of this over, and then while this is very slowly drying, we're gonna take our toothpick and scratch over the zones. Now what this is gonna do is gonna bring the layer of red that was underneath our green and bring that through to make, well, a veined effect. Once that's dry, we're going to go through with a little bit of yellow, accent around maybe the little sides, round where the slit eye is going to be. Just attack those spots. It gives a little bit more depth and dimension. Try and keep the edges of both the eyes white. This is going to save a lot of problems later down, and well, the more white you've got, the better. You can always add the paint over it. Now we're going to stop for a moment, and we're going to just spray this in a rattle can clear coat. Just a 1K clear is totally fine, automotive range, but what is this going to do is going to seal in our paint and shine it up a bit. And then once that's dried, we can just repeat the same sorts of steps. Maybe we're going to do a little bit of veins. We're going to do a little bit more of a lighted green, maybe around some of the accented details. Maybe we want like a bit of a green splodge in here. We'll go with that. Both eyes do not have to be the same. Mine are not. This eye is 1,000 times better than this eye, but you just have fun and play around with it. The crucial thing I'll say to get this beautiful yellowy tone at the very, very end, it is a combination of a hint of white. So I'm gonna say about a drop or two. Then you're gonna go in with maybe 3 drops of yellow and 2 drops of red. You don't need much very paint in the airbrush because these pieces are so small, you can get away with just using drops. Don't need a whole squirt of the paint. But this is going to give you this yellowy red green effect without using any green, because the green is really, really harsh and will affect literally everything you do. So once you sprayed that, I then go through with another clear coat. Maybe then the next coat, do your eye slit, but I'd recommend hand painting this. So hand paint it on, then also take a little bit of that clear red that we used on our throat and do a bit of a speckled effect. and just a light haze over everything. Then go over your black slits again, deepen them up, and another clear coat over the top to seal the project in. Now, I will say that my eyes did not do this first time. I'm just giving you little quick tips on what worked for me. I don't really have a full 100% this is exactly how you get it every single time, because it is not like that. Both my eyes are different. You can see this slit is a little bit bigger than this one. Yes, I can go back and fix this, but for time's sake, I just want to leave it at the moment. But I'd highly recommend go with the smaller slit. It works a lot better. And from our original designs of trying to maybe use a contact lens, that just didn't really work. And I think I'm a lot happier painting on a physical item rather than trying to paint into the actual crevice of this eye. It gives you a two-tone depth of dimension, especially having that resin in there. But unfortunately, our little idea of using the resin as our clear coat didn't really work. But once with those things installed, I think we call this project done. And that is the bust, well, complete. I am super happy with how this one turned out. I will say the one thing I do want to go back maybe one day and fix are going to be both the eyes. I'm not the happiest on them. I think I definitely could have done a much better job on them. Maybe just making the slits a little bit deeper or a little bit thinner, maybe add a little bit more detail and texture, and probably just going through with an actual 3D file and resin printing these properly. That way I can get so much more depth and texture within this, but unfortunately, I'm just gonna leave it at this for this, just to try and, well, call this project done. But the pipes, I'm super happy with. Yes, you're gonna have to maybe tweak some of the files just to try and get things in. Maybe you're gonna have to break some stuff to get it working, but that's all part of the fun. But I think in the end, you can get these in pretty well. They're not the hardest things, but on for the paint, I think we nailed it with the bone white. I definitely think that was a crucial piece that we said at the very start. We didn't want white and we didn't want a creamy color. We wanted something in between. And I think with this weathering, we nailed the color. In terms of the eyes, I think that the eye sockets, absolutely nailed them. And the throat, nailed them. Pipes, nailed them. And the whole assembly of this thing, I nailed it. So I definitely think our three criteria that we made at the start, we've absolutely nailed it. And I think, I'd argue, I've got one of the best Grievous busts that are out there. But I think our Lumiluster details look absolutely on point. I know how to make a Lumiluster stuff look good. I've done it enough in the last year, but that is definitely a bit of a pop to the rest of the helmet, and especially this weathering. I have no idea how I did it. I had never done this style of weathering before. I'm really used to doing just a lot of dry brushing and that sort of stuff. Never had thought to paint on something, then go through with water and a dry chucks, and it created this monstrosity, but hey, it worked. So I definitely think the full assembly of this thing has worked absolutely perfect. Our gunmetal that we did at the very start, on point. It matches in really, really nicely, I think, just to the bone white, and yeah. But I don't really know what else I can really say. The eye sockets we nailed. I definitely would recommend go through with some PVA and some wood chips. 100% do it. Yes, it's gonna be a little bit more time consuming. You gotta let things dry and paint over those sorts of things, but it elevated this thing crazily. So I definitely would recommend, no matter what 3D file you've got, whether it be Galactic Armories, whether it be someone else's, something on Thingiverse, I definitely would go with adding some details to the throat and the eyes just to give it that even more depth, because it looks so good. But I am going to call that done. I think the stand as well, I forgot to mention that. I just paint it in a gloss black and it seems to work fine. I was thinking I'd have to sand it. I didn't sand it. I just coated it in black 2K. Now the last thing I will also say is the head assembly. Because it's on a ball and socket joint, I've taken mine off a heap and it's sort of warped and moved. But the way I'm able to get this thing to fit absolutely perfectly every single time is by using some of this. This is just kids foam. It's, I don't know, 5 mil thick or so. And I just cut off a tiny little square. You pop it in the ball joint and you just click it on. This gives you obviously a fair bit of move, like softness, so it catches and it doesn't slide and the head doesn't tip or anything. So definitely get yourself a sheet of this. You can pick it up really, really cheap on Amazon or in a craft store, and just cut it to size, pop it into the neck joint up in here, and well, then you can pose the head however you like. I'm starting to sort of like it on a side, a bit like that. So thanks so much guys for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments what you think I did well, what I think I could improve on, and well, let me know if you make one of these yourself. And if you do, please tag me over on my Instagram. I'd love to see what you end up building. So I'll see you all next week for the final YouTube video of my series, where I set myself a challenge of making a YouTube video every single week for an entire year, going through so many different projects, to little tutorials from painting to LPH80s to Grievuses. It's been a crazy last 52 weeks. So I will see you all next week for that very final video. But enough rambling, enough talking. Let's head to the final result.